Hello everyone, thank you for attending this webinar that will give you an overview of Clause 4 of ISO 9001-2015, specifically about the context of an organization, interested parties, and scope. My name is Pereira da Cruz and I'm an author at 𝗪𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀 at 9001 Academy. I do quite a lot of ISO 9001 consulting and training, but also auditing as lead auditor. And so today, I'm going to share with you my thoughts about the value behind dealing with the context of an organization, interested parties, and their relevant requirements, and the QMS scope, as described in Clause 4 of ISO 9001. My presentation will last approximately 40 minutes, after which we'll do the 20-minute question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question, you don't have to wait for the Q&A session. You can ask it during my presentation by clicking the Q&A icon and writing your question. Of course, in the Q&A session, I'll also answer all of your remaining questions. If you click on the chat icon or on the comments, you can download right away a PDF file with the handout of this presentation and check the links to articles that will be mentioned during the presentation. Okay? So, now let's do it. So this webinar is important because Clause 4 is about the fundamental decisions in a QMS. So these choices define its boundaries and shape its content. If you get this wrong, the whole system may end up weak or, well, misaligned. Today, we'll explore how to handle three key elements: the context of the organization, the needs and expectations of interested parties, and defining the scope of the QMS. Together, they provide the framework for everything else in ISO 9001. And we will mention the draft international standard changes related with these clauses, okay? And this webinar is aimed at quality managers, internal auditors, consultants, and anyone responsible for implementing or maintaining a quality management system. And these professionals need to master Clause 4 to ensure the system is built on solid ground. Let's see our agenda for today. So we'll start with scope and applicability of clauses, okay? Then we'll discuss relevant interested parties and their needs and expectations, okay? Then we will discuss context, internal and external issues. You see, context, internal and external issues. And because I see many organizations determining internal and external issues, okay, and determining interested parties and their requirements and expectations, and then nothing about it, okay? And they don't do nothing about it. It's something that gets buried in a drawer and comes to the surface only during the management review, and then go back into a coma, okay? So we determine these things because they are in the standard, but they're in the standard with a purpose, okay? That's why we show this, okay? We show how context and interested parties may be related to organizational risks and opportunities and to climate change, okay? And at the end, we'll present the main challenges based on the questions received before this webinar, okay? So let's go. So why Clause 4 is important? So one of your company's first decisions during QMS implementation should be determining the system's scope. So different scopes may determine very different QMSs, okay? Defining the system scope is much more important than it seems at first glance. So when the scope is unclear, the project becomes vulnerable to one thing called scope creep. That is, the uncontrolled or unplanned expansion of what the QMS is supposed to cover. So you start with an idea of the QMS or with its borders, and you finish with another, okay? So this can happen when people interpret the purpose, boundaries, or responsibilities differently throughout the project, okay? Now, because different scopes lead to very different QMSs, not defining the scope clearly from the start can result in bad things like misaligned expectations between top management, process owners, and the project team. inclusion of activities, sites, or products that were never meant to be part of the system, so increasing workload and complexity, delays and budget overruns because new requirements emerge mid-project, or confusion over certification boundaries potentially leads to audit non-conformities. Failure to demonstrate value as the QMS ends up too broad, okay, generic, or disconnected from the organizational actual needs, okay? Now, our QMS exists to serve others. While working to serve others, the clients, we want to achieve objectives, desired results. We want to avoid undesirable results, and we need to comply with compliance obligations. Okay, so some interested parties, like suppliers, will help us, we hope, and some, like regulators, will set constraints. Okay, so that's how the interested parties act. Achieving the expected results is not straightforward, okay, because context brings uncertainty. Uncertainty may result in organizational risks and opportunities, okay? So this is the big picture. So let's see. We have here clause 4.1 about the issues, the internal and external issues and uncertainty. 4.2, okay, about interested parties. 4.3 about the scope. And yeah, and by the way, clause 6.1, okay, here about risks and opportunities. Now, please check this article, how to use the inputs from the context of the organization, clauses 4.1 and 4.2, to build your management system, okay? Now, let's move. So let's start with clause 4.3 about the scope of the QMS. The organization shall define, document, and make available the scope of the QMS, referring to the products and services that are provided, and determining the limits of the management system. And ISO 9001 gives you a lot of freedom to determine what is part of the QMS, okay? So the scope defines and communicates the borders of the QMS. So the scope should clearly describe the type of products and services covered by the system and provide sufficient information, preventing the transmission of erroneous or misleading information about what the organization covers in the quality management system and what it can provide to its customers. It must be available because the organization communicates to the relevant interested parties, namely customers and potential customers, the products and services it makes available under the QMS through the scope. So let's see an example. So consider a hotel, okay? So the hotel may provide services like, hospitality, conference room, events, spa, pool, and restaurant. The hotel may sell services through travel agencies, websites, phone, and over-the-counter. And the hotel may provide or may serve groups or individuals, okay? Now, top management may decide, and this is a management decision, not a technical decision, not a decision for consultants, it's a management decision, that they may decide that, okay, only hospitality will be included in the scope, okay? And the exercise can go even deeper and say hospitality through travel agencies for groups. So top management may decide that certification will be useful for increasing work or business with travel agencies, okay? So they decide that the scope will be hospitality for groups through travel agencies as the channel. Now, ISO 9001 is also applicable to a multi-site organization. If that's the case, the scope must be clear about it, okay? Now, I leave here the link for two articles. One is how to define the scope of the QMS according to ISO 9001, and the other is certifying different legal entities under one certification scope in ISO 9001. Now, scope, so the borders. Now, let's see the applicability, okay, of clauses. No, with ISO 9001-2015, no exclusions are allowed. So if a clause is applicable, it must be considered in the QMS. but whether or not the clause applies may depend on the scope of the QMS, okay? So as in the following example. So the question is clause 8.3 design and development applicable? Well, for the green company manufactures products for clients' brands. The red company manufactures products for its own brand. And the blue company manufactures products for clients' brands and for its own brand. So for clients' brands, 40%, for its own brand, 60%. So the question is clause 8.3, design and development of products and services, applicable to these companies' QMS? Oh, no in the first case, the company doesn't design the product. Yes in the second case, the company designs the product. And in the third, it depends, okay? So it depends on the scope of the QMS. If the scope of the QMS states own design or own brand, clause 8.3 is applicable. If it only states manufacturing for others, so clause 8.3 is not applicable, even if the company designs some products outside of the QMS scope, okay? Now, I leave here a link for 2 articles, what clauses can be excluded in ISO 9001-2015, and specific use of ISO 9001 design and development in the machining processes. Okay, so let's see differences between ISO 9001-2015 and this recent draft international standard. Well, there are no differences between clause 4.3 in ISO 9001-2015 with the amendment. So if we already include the amendment of February 2024, okay? So, and there's no difference between clause 4.3 in ISO 9001 and in the draft international standard. Only editorial changes. Something was here, now is there, but in terms of position, okay? Now, next October 2nd, okay, we will have here a live free webinar about all the differences between ISO 9001-2015 and ISO Draft International Standard 9001-2025, okay? Yeah, so 4.3 is. So now let's dive into clause 4.2, okay? So an organization exists to serve others, okay? The clients. Increasingly, markets are becoming too complex to be viewed as a simple dyadic relation supplier-client. So for a particular organization, it can be important to consider as interested parties also the client's clients. If that market is highly regulated, perhaps regulators can be considered an interested party. Now, does the business depend on critical know-how from workers? Is there hard competition for workers? Well, perhaps they too can be considered a relevant interested party. Now, an organization can consider other interested parties as relevant, for example, critical suppliers, prescribers, so those with power over customers. So, for example, like a physician prescribing a medicine to a patient, or influencers, those without power over customers, but with a big influence, like fashion bloggers or like famous athletes using a product. Or perhaps non-governmental organizations can be of help or hindrance to the activity of the organization. So perhaps they can be considered a relevant interested party. I say perhaps, okay? For all those entities, perhaps. What about banks, okay? For some organizations, they may be a relevant interested party. And of course, top management or owners or shareholders. So after determining the relevant interested parties, an organization must determine their requirements. So for example, for banks, top management, and workers, we may say that they are concerned with business results, reputation, and financial stability. So we are increasingly seeing banks linking financing decisions with sustainability and business continuity, for example. Now, let me give you a warning, okay? Have you ever read Annex A3 from ISO 9001-2015? Now, in the last paragraph states, there is no requirement in this international standard for the organization to consider interested parties where it has decided that those parties are not relevant to its quality management system. Okay, so there is no requirement, okay, to consider interested parties where where the organization has decided that those parties are not relevant to its quality management system. Remember, we are not in a competition to have the longest list of interested parties. And personally, I'm tired of certification auditors writing in their audit reports, you should include the certification body, you should include the calibration service providers as interested parties. Come on, too much information clutters the essential. Remember, we are designing a model of the organization. All models are wrong, some are useful, okay? So if we try to put everything there, clutters the essential. Now, I leave here the link for two articles. One is Understanding Needs and Expectations of Interested Parties in ISO 9001, and the other is How to Determine Interested Parties and Their Requirements According to ISO 9001. And by the way, Annex A3 also includes this interesting part. It is for the organization to decide if a particular requirement of a relevant interested party is relevant to its quality management system. And we will come back to it later, to this point later, okay? Now, let's see an example. An IT service company must look beyond the direct client relationship. So our client might be a company that uses our cloud services, cybersecurity, or technical support. Okay, but who else matters? We may need to consider the following as relevant interested parties. We may, okay? Our clients, especially if our services impact their experience. Regulatory bodies, particularly if you operate in highly regulated sectors like finance or healthcare. Highly skilled employees whose retention is crucial. Technology partners, such as cloud providers or software vendors, and of course, owners or shareholders who expect sustainable performance. So each organization needs to make a reasoned decision about who its relevant interested parties are and why. But here's the key point. This is not about making a long list just to show you thought about everything, okay? So ISO 9001 makes it clear. Only those interested parties that are relevant to your quality management system should be considered. And relevance is not a matter of guesswork. It should be based on your business model and your strategy. So for example, if your company is positioning itself as a premium managed service provider, then customer experience, compliance, and talent retention are likely to be crucial. So you'll prioritize clients, regulators, and employees as key interested parties. But if you're a startup offering low-cost IT support, maybe speed and price matter more than certifications or regulatory compliance. So relevance means business logic. Think like a strategist, not just like a compliance officer, okay? So who can influence your ability to deliver value and succeed in your market? That's who matters, okay? That is who matters. Now, we determine the interested parties. Now, understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties. So once we determine who the relevant interested parties are, the next step is to understand what they need and expect from us. So let's look at some examples in this IT service company. So the clients, they expect reliability, responsiveness, security and trust, value for money, adaptability, okay? Regulators may expect compliance with standards such as GDPR or payment card industry data security standard, you know. Or employees may expect continual training, positive work environment, and job security. Technology partners expect technical alignment, clear collaboration, and contractual commitment. And shareholders or owners expect profitability, growth, and reputation. Okay? So remember, not every expectation needs to be addressed in the QMS. the key is determining those that influence our ability to consistently deliver quality services aligned with our strategic options. So I wrote this that I just said and use it in previous webinars before the new draft international standard, okay? Because an item when we see now what is the difference between the draft international standard and ISO 9001, we see that an item C was added to clause 4.2, requiring an analysis of which of the interested party requirements must be addressed through the QMS. So this was in the Annex A3, and now it is in the body of the clause. So these are the generic. So for example, here in this client, reliability, responsiveness, security and trust, value for money, adaptability, we can say that these are the generic requirements, okay? But different kinds of clients are served by different strategies. So different kinds of clients want or need or value different things. So we can think of segment one, a reliability-focused customer that expect high uptime, rapid response, strong data protection, service level agreement compliance. Another possibility is a segment two, cost-sensitive small businesses that expect or want something affordable, straightforward, and predictable services. And we may even think about a third segment, customization-driven enterprises that expect tailored solutions, integration, dedicated support. And you see, each type of customer determines different quality objectives. So for example, for the reliability focused, an important quality objective could be something like this: maintain system uptime above 99.9% of the time, okay? So for the cost sensitive, something like standard service packages with setup completed in less than 48 hours. So if it's standard, is something that is off the shelf. Not like the next one, tailor solution. No, at least 95% of customization projects on time and within scope. Okay, so this is why this item C is important. Okay, because it's related with your strategy, and your strategy related with your quality objectives, and this makes a different system with different priorities. Okay, now the amendment about climate change was included in a note. It's strange in a note because a note is not something that is mandatory. I think that they will change this and put in the body of the clause, but let's see. And by the way, clause 9.3.2c about management review inputs mentions that now it's something new in the draft. Management reviews must explicitly consider changes in the needs and expectations of interested parties as an input. Okay, so this is a new requirement included in the draft international standard. I believe many companies were already doing this, but okay. So interested parties, their requirements. Let's see now the link. Let's see how this all connects to business and quality objectives. Because of that thing that people determine the interested parties, determine the relevant requirements, and then don't do nothing with that. No, we need to do, that's precious material that we need to use in our QMS. Okay, so imagine the company aims to reduce the average resolution time for critical incidents from 4 hours to 2 hours over the next quarter. So this is something that is working, contributing to achieving that QMS objective of maintaining system uptime above 99.9%. So why this objective? Well, because clients and regulators, especially in sectors like healthcare and finance, have a low tolerance for downtime or delays. And owners want to avoid service level agreement penalties and protect the company's reputation. And so this shows how a clear quality objective can emerge from the combined needs of multiple interested parties. Now, today's organization generates today's results. When we set an objective, so a future desired result, we consider our internal context, so our strengths and weaknesses, to calibrate the target and the actions that we need to develop a better performance. So what actions, what we need to change to remove or to mitigate the weaknesses or to take advantages of the strengths. So those actions will change the current organization into the future organization, the only one able to deliver the future desired results. So for example, employees need efficient tools and streamlined processes to achieve it. So for example, you want to go from 4 hours to 2 hours over the next quarter. How can you expect that change in performance? So again, I said already that we'll act upon weaknesses and we will use the strengths. So that means we will change some existing things and start new things. Next, we'll explore how internal and external issues can influence whether or not we reach the objectives. Okay, so now that we've seen how interested parties shape our objectives, let's focus on internal issues, things inside the company that may help or hinder us in achieving those goals. So let's go back to our objective, reduce the average resolution time for critical incidents from 4 hours to 2 hours. And I always like to ask this question, why is it currently 4 hours? Why are not we already there in the 2 hours? Well, internal issues might explain that there may be inefficient coordination between support tiers, okay? Perhaps the incident management tool isn't user-friendly or fast enough. Maybe we lack enough trained staff during night shifts or weekends. Or maybe we rely too much on manual processes when automation could help. So these are weaknesses, okay? On the other hand, some internal strengths might help us achieve the goal, like a highly skilled second-line support team, strong process documentation, existing relationships with key technology partners who could offer faster diagnostics, and these are strengths. So understanding our current internal reality, so both weaknesses and strengths, help us build a realistic action plan to reach the objective. Okay. Last week during the workshop about the webinar about the risks and opportunities, we had a question from, I remember the name, Francisco. Francisco was saying people were making lists of internal and external issues that were like a Santa Claus issue list. Okay, so in these situations here, you see, I'm not making a completely free brainstorming about internal external issues. No, I focus on what we want. We want to reduce the average resolution time for critical incidents from 4 hours to 2 hours over the next quarter. Why is it currently 4 hours? Okay, because there are some weaknesses that conspire for us to get that current performance, and there are some strengths that we are not using. Okay, that's how we do it, not a brainstorming, free brainstorming at, okay, what, all the war there, or because of the moon is something. No, it's focused what can affect our ability to achieve the objectives, because the system is a machine to achieve the objectives, okay, of the management system. Now, okay, so we set objectives and we intend to achieve them. However, we live in a world full of uncertainty. Some say we live more and more in a VUCA world, where VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now, because of uncertainties, there may be positive or negative deviations regarding expected results. Now, so uncertainty is not a universal quality of a fact. It's an experience that depends on who is observing and in what context, okay? Because uncertainty, for some, they will look into something and say, okay, this is an opportunity, I can use it. And the others will look into the same situation and say, this is a risk, or this is, not a risk, sorry, a weakness or a strength. That's why when managing risk or communicating uncertainty, in business, healthcare, or public policy, it is crucial to consider who is experiencing that uncertainty and under what conditions, okay? So where is the uncertainty? Mostly in the external context, okay? Because external context is something that we cannot control. So we've looked inside, now let's look outside. External issues are factors we don't control, but which can affect our ability to meet our goals. So continuing with our objective to reduce resolution time, let's use a pestle lens to think through the external context. So using pestle is not mandatory, but it's a useful tool, okay? It's a kind of way of... So pestle helps us determine external issues. So again, we look into this, what we want to achieve, and we think, are there any changes, or are there any uncertainty related with political issues that can affect our ability to achieve this objective? So changes in data residency law may affect how fast we can act in certain regions. Budget constraints from clients may reduce service contracts, limiting response time options. So social expectations for 24/7 availability are rising. People expect immediate resolution. Technological new threats like zero-day attacks can increase the complexity of incidents. Legal, so regulations like GDPR may slow down how we escalate incidents across jurisdictions. Environmental, so extreme weather events can disrupt our own infrastructure or that of our clients. So some of these external issues might present risks, other opportunities. For example, if clients demand faster service, that could be a risk. That could be a risk if we are not ready, or an opportunity if we are. So understanding these issues help us anticipate uncertainty and build resilience into our plans. So if we follow this approach, again, we'll not run in a competition to list the longest list of external issues, but you will get a useful and relevant list. So what issues in the external context can have an influence in our objectives, desired results, results to avoid, and legal compliance? So external issues are outside factors or situations that can affect your organization in a negative way, making it harder for the organization to achieve its expected results, or outside factors or situations that the organization can take advantage of to better achieve expected results. Okay, so these are examples of external issues. External issues are not intrinsically positive or negative. Okay, again, I repeat this many times. In times of crisis, some cry and others sell handkerchiefs. So positive or negative connotation is a subjective classification based on strategic orientation, skills, worldview, mindset. Yeah, so how internal and external issues interact. Now, another way of showing that we need to do something with the external and the internal issues is not just something that we present in a table during the management review and that's it. No. So internal issues are resources or capabilities that help an organization achieve its expected results, or deficiencies in resources or capabilities that hinder an organization's ability to achieve its objectives. Okay, so internal issues act together with the external issues to raise risks or opportunities regarding the QMS objectives. So many companies organize and present internal and external issues with the help of a SWOT matrix. Okay, positive internal issues are strengths, negative internal issues are weaknesses, positive external issues are opportunities, and negative external issues are threats. Okay, and remember, the connotation positive or negative is not independent, is not intrinsical, depends on your context, depends on your strategy. So for example, if your company is Ferrari, is producing Ferraris, you will not say, oh, our high price is a weakness. Oh, come on, the customer of the Ferrari doesn't care about the price. Okay, so Now we can determine if there are relevant combinations between strengths and opportunities and threats, and between weaknesses and opportunities and threats. So when we combine internal and external issues, we start to uncover more useful insights. So this is where the SWOT logic helps, okay? So again, I see too many organizations preparing a SWOT matrix, very nice, and nothing more, an annex to be buried in the management review report. Now, let's revisit our objective, reduce resolution time from 4 to 2 hours. So we already saw some internal weaknesses like poor coordination and lack of automation. We also saw some external threats like growing customer expectations or complex new cyber threats. So these two together could create a serious risk. So for example, if we're already slow and then hit by a new security breach, the result could be service level agreement violations and client dissatisfaction, a risk. Okay, but now let's look at other combinations. If we have internal strengths, say a strong second line team, and good vendor relationships, and we face external opportunities like new AI diagnostic tools, we could leverage those to reach our 2-hour target faster. And that's an opportunity. So when we make these combinations, when we combine strengths and opportunities, we raise an opportunity to act. When we combine weakness and the threat, we raise a risk to mitigate. Okay. When we combine strengths and threat, we signal a resilience to reinforce. So, and when we combine weakness and opportunity, we signal the risk of missing out. Okay, there's an opportunity in the market, and we cannot take advantage of that opportunity because of an internal weakness. Okay, yeah. So this is the logic that connects to your QMS, not just determining issues, but understanding how they combine to affect performance. Okay, so you will find all the documents that can help you with tracking all those in our ISO 9001 Premium Toolkit. Let me show you how it looks like. Okay, so let me see here. So here I present the list of all the articles, all the procedures, appendixes, forms that we have in our ISO 9001 Premium Documentation Toolkit. Okay, so here I will show you these examples here for procedure for determining context of the organization and interested parties, and the list of interested parties, and procedure for addressing risks and opportunities, and the registry of key risks and opportunities. Okay, so now I go here. I have this procedure here. So you have here, so this is a Word document that you can customize. Okay, there is some links for articles that can help you. So you have this. So as I said, and you have your the text, so internal context, the external, identification, interested parties, consideration of the context of the organization. And we have, for example, for internal context, you have here examples that you can build on these examples, remove those that are not applicable, add some more that are applicable to you. Also, same for external context. Now, you have here the title, so you can customize this to your roles and responsibilities. You have here this twice a year. Okay, adapt to your organization's practice. Yeah. Okay, then we have here for the documentation, the records. Okay, and then as an example, we have this for the list of interested parties. Okay, so what are the needs and expectations? Okay, who is responsible for those? Yep. So check. Okay, and also for the procedure for risks and opportunities. Again, a Word document you can customize. There are some documents that can help you. Yeah, that's it. So identification of risks, methodology for evaluation of risks and opportunities, determine the level of risk. Yeah, the criteria. So something like that for the matrices. Yeah. And an example for how to make the registry for key risks and opportunities, something like this. Again, you can add more columns. You can make all the changes that you want. Okay, so you can see the details of this toolkit here. So I'll leave here the link for that. Okay. All right. Okay. Oops. It's here. Okay. So let's see the differences between 9001 and the draft international standard. So there are no changes in requirements, only editorial changes. Okay. And yes, of course, climate change incorporated, but was already there because of the amendment. Yeah. Now, before this webinar, we received many questions regarding the ISO 9001 amendment. So the amendment requires all organizations. Now that will be part of, yeah. The amendment requires all organizations to consider climate change as part of their context. Okay, clause 4.1 and interested parties, clause 4.2. Let's see how I do it. Okay, so first I review interested parties, and I determine if interested parties for whom, if there are any interested parties for whom climate change is relevant. Okay, customers, regulators, local communities, insurance companies, employees. Okay, so do any of them expect us to manage climate-related impacts? Okay, then I review the context, clause 4.1. I consider climate change as an external issue that can affect your ability to achieve intended outcomes. Examples can be extreme weather affecting service delivery, new regulations on carbon emissions, market pressure to demonstrate sustainability. Okay, so then you need to determine relevant. Okay, climate change is not automatically irrelevant to small businesses. Okay, I know that someone there wasn't a question before the webinar saying, okay, and what if we decide that the climate change is not applicable or is not relevant for us? Fair, you can say that. You can conclude that in your management review, but you need to justify. Okay, it's not acceptable to say climate change is irrelevant without justification. Okay, so even small businesses can be affected by temperature changes affecting materials or working conditions, fuel use and emissions, customer requirements, or tenders with environmental clauses. Okay, now assess relevance and then determine risks and opportunities. What could go wrong, risks, or be improved opportunities due to climate change? So, yeah. So we can, for example, have delays from climate events or have more sustainable practices. Sustainable practices can open new markets, like, for example, using eco-friendly materials. Yeah. And then last step, integrate into the QMS. Okay, include climate-related aspects where relevant, objectives, maybe may include objectives like reduce carbon footprint, operational planning like sourcing sustainable materials, training like awareness of climate-related risks, communication, so reporting progress to stakeholders. Okay, and also some questions about what auditors may expect to see. Okay, so evidence that climate change was considered when analyzing context and interested parties. They want to see that. A documented or demonstrable process to evaluate whether climate change is relevant. If relevant, evidence of action such as risk assessments, objectives, or resource planning. And if considered not relevant, a justified and reviewed rationale. Okay, so I leave here the link for an article called Climate Action Changes Amendment in ISO Standards. Okay. Okay, main challenges. So based on the frequency of questions in your emails prior to this webinar, these are the main challenges with clause 4 of ISO 9001. So the participation of top management and heads of department. So I had some questions and answers about that in the Q&A. Relationship between risk and clauses 4.1 and 4.2. Okay. amendment about climate change, yes, and documenting context and interested parties. Also, some questions about that during the Q&A. Okay, so conclusion. To conclude, one can say that an organization determines the scope of the QMS that best suits the company, the context, the relevant interested parties, and the relevant requirements of each interested party. And to make that process easier, you can use 𝗣𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀 ISO 9001 Premium Documentation Toolkit. So here's the link with more details. And I'll also send you now the meeting link to schedule a call with our toolkit expert. It'll explain you how toolkit works and show you any document you'd like to see. Okay, so here's the link, toolkit expert meeting link. Okay, so I leave you some other links for you to take a look at our courses. You can enroll for them for free, so you can see all our videos and quizzes and everything for free. Okay, so you have the link for the 9001 Foundations course about the standard, the 9001 Lead Implementer course, the 9001 Internal Auditor course, and the 9001 Lead Auditor course. Okay, so I wrote a book about 9001. Perhaps it may be helpful for you in your journey. So I'll leave you the link for the book. Now, before we begin the question and answer session, you can also ask me anything directly about ISO 9001. Just email me and I'll answer as quickly as possible. So if you have to leave before this Q&A session, please fill in the short survey that will open right after you leave the webinar. Okay? So let's see some questions here. Question from Grace. So if a company calls itself manufacturer, but has its products manufactured by an external company, basically outsourced manufacturing, will clause 8.3 be applicable? Well, it may be applicable if the design of the product is made by your organization. Yes, it's applicable, okay, because the manufacturer, the clause 8.3 is not automatically applicable just because someone calls himself manufacturer. No, is who owns the design of the product, okay? Or, well, in truth is sometimes in some situations also who designs the process. But in this case, okay, who designs the product? If the blueprint for manufacturing is made by the company that provides the company that provides the blueprint to the manufacturer organization that is actually doing the product. So that's the one that provides the blueprint. 8.3 is applicable. Okay. Mo asks, why may the influencer be relevant to a QMS of a company? Oh, that will depend if the company, a company may decide to do something like that. So, for example, yesterday morning, I was listening to a YouTube video in my morning walk before starting to work, where the person in the video was saying that if someone has a company that sells through the through the internet, okay, one interesting thing to do is to find some friends or some influencers, okay, some friends that can start a conversation, for example, comments on social networks, in order to raise the importance of the relevance in the algorithm. So yeah, so it's not mandatory, okay, but it may be relevant, okay. So you know, when the royal family in England appears with some kind of dress, okay, in the next days that dress is always it's a sellout in the retail shops, okay. So in that sense, okay. Yeah. Anna asks, what does VUCA mean? So VUCA means volatility, means uncertainty, means, whoa, okay, let me, I know I forgot. Oh, where is it? Oh, 𝗂𝗲𝗴𝗏. It's where the it's strange. How can I? Now it's the pressure, so it's here. No, not if it's here. Not here. Oh, right. I know it's here. Okay. So yeah, VUCA. Okay, VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Okay, ambiguity. Yes, that was the one. Okay, right now, Noor asked, I'm using internal FITCO, external pestle. Is it okay? Yeah, if it works for you, it's okay. Okay, because there's no mandatory, nothing mandatory according to the standard. Okay, so if it works for you, if it's helpful, great. How to link risk? Mary asks how to link risk assessment with the outcomes of 4.1 and 4.2. Yeah, I demonstrate that because now we determine those risks and opportunities here, and now we need to do the assessment. Okay, we do the same kind of assessment that we showed last week in the webinar about the risk management. We can apply it here. Okay. Ferdinand asks, will clause 8.3 be applicable if an organization develops a system like an electronic medical recording system? Yes. If the company develops that system and and sells that system, yes, it's applicable. 𝗂𝗲𝗏𝗀𝗏 asks, a vendor of a vendor may have indirect impact on your QMS or even ISMS. How are they managed? Likewise, a different vendor of one of your customers impacts your QMS. How are they managed? It's like you come here. So if you think that they somehow, yes, of course, they're. Sometimes I say we can always go back to Adam and Eve, okay, into the beginning of the beginning of the beginning. But what will be the cause effect? So what will be the impact? So if the impact is not very big, or if the impact is not relevant, but okay, if a vendor of a vendor is relevant, okay, in that situation, what we need to do is to include that in our list, okay. And then we need to do something like this to think about what do they need or expect. Okay, so for example, about so for example, we may have situations where about the suppliers. So for example, the technology partners could be something like this. So we can say something like, why will they collaborate with us? Why will they prefer working with us instead of working with others? Okay, that may be relevant. Okay, I know that there are. I remember reading this during this summer, a situation where they were saying in a management magazine that a customer, that the supplier with novelties, with innovation, normally presents the innovations not to the biggest customers first, but to the customers with whom they have better relationship. Okay, perhaps because they are not yet well prepared, or they don't feel confident with presenting the new product, so they present the new product or the new innovative product in a more friendly environment. Okay, so let me see here just to Anna Elisangela Noor asked, how can an organization involve both top management and department heads in identifying relevant issues and interested parties under clauses 4.1 and 4.2? Okay, so clauses 4.1 and 4.2 are not only for top management, okay? They require a shared review across the organization. So top management ensures alignment with the strategic direction, but department heads contribute their knowledge of external and internal issues, as well as interested parties' expectations that affect their processes. Okay, so the key is to involve different functions in determining and prioritizing what really matters, and then communicate it clearly to management so they can take decisions. Maud asked, how should external stakeholders, such as the local community, be considered in this process? So, okay, so for example, surrounding communities may be concerned with noise, traffic, or environmental impacts. So this should be considered if they are relevant to delivering quality. Some may say, oh, this is environment, this is not relevant. Okay, fair. But in some situations, I see some situations like this. So then the company has some success in the market. They want to expand, and the local community, the surrounding community, doesn't allow that because they have a bad relationship. The company has a bad relationship with the community because of the noise, the traffic, the environmental impact. So yeah, make note of that. Okay. So Julieta asked, is procedure manual needed for interested parties? No, it's not mandatory, but if your organization finds it helpful, you should create it. And Ray asked, should clause 4.1 be addressed distinctly and differently by each department, or is it enough that it should be addressed institutionally? Well, clause 4.1 must be addressed institutionally, not department by department, okay? It's about the organization as a whole, okay? Identifying external and internal issues that can affect its ability to achieve intended results as a whole, okay? That said, input from different departments is very valuable, okay? Because each one sees risks, trends, and opportunities from its own perspective, okay? And last question is from Edward. When being audited by a certification body, must the auditee provide tools used to determine interested parties? Auditors sometimes dig deep into this when it's the organization who determines interested parties and their requirements. So must the auditee provide tools used? No. ISO 9001 does not prescribe any specific tool or method to determine interested parties. What is required is that the organization determines who the relevant interested parties are and what their requirements are, insofar as they affect the ability to consistently provide products and services. Certification body auditors may ask how this determination was made, and they may want to see evidence that it was done in a structured, repeatable way. But the organization is free to choose the tool. So even a simple list or table is acceptable as long as it's clear, justified, and kept up to date. So the obligation is to show a logical process and results, not to present a specific tool. Okay. So auditors, and this is important, auditors should not impose their own preferred method. Come on. So yeah. Let me see here. I think I don't have any questions from the. Okay. So. Okay, I think I've covered all your questions. So let's wrap up the webinar. So just a few words before we finish. As I mentioned, this 1-hour webinar was intended to give you a general overview of Section 4 of ISO 9001, not to go into details. For that, please take a look at our blogs, the links that we presented here. You can ask me anything about ISO 9001 directly by email. You can also download this presentation deck from our website or take a look at video tutorials and documentation templates. We'll send you the email with all the necessary links. Finally, if you join this webinar through Zoom, you'll see a short survey. So I would kindly ask you to spend a minute to fill it in. The recording of this presentation will be available in a few hours. You'll receive a link to the recording. If you join the webinar through LinkedIn and YouTube, you will receive a link to the short survey now, and the link to the presentation will be posted on our event page in a few minutes. Okay. That will be all. Thank you for your participation, and I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Have a nice day. Jean Gaspi, I will send you an answer after this webinar, okay?